Welcome to the Ray Festival live in Bulgaria and online wherever you are in the world.
Hello, everybody, and very welcome to Marc Germain. Hi there.
Hi.
Hello, Mark.
Hello.
So, we're contacting you here from the Human Design Ray Festival 2024, online worldwide, and also live in Aura in Sofia, Bulgaria, in Europe. But it's really an international event, connecting people from all over the world, experimenting with the human design system. And we thought we would like to bring in some people who are really radical about it and who have been for some time in the system. So, Mark, we're very glad to have you here and connect online through the neutrino ocean.
Thanks for having me. I love the internet. I love I love Facebook. I love a lot of different things that connect people, especially in human design community, because there's so few of us in any one given area usually. So it's nice when they come together and in one way or another, and we build relationships. And I've done that over the years, and I've met a lot of people in person that started out online. So it's always nice to have that opportunity.
Yeah.
By the way, talking about online and us interviewing you, how is it for you as a projector to look at two people at the same time?
I'm okay. Sometimes you'll notice actually sometimes I'll close my eyes is when I talk. Actually, I'm meditation on my motivation. So, I'm outer vision. On the way in, I look. On the way out, I go deeper and I sometimes close my eyes to get an answer. So I might not even be looking at either of you. Depending at certain times, depending on the conversation. But no, it's okay because I'm in a tight little box and I'm like a chameleon eye going this way and one going that way. It's like, so I'm okay. Oh,
And Julia, how is it for you then, also as a projector?
For me, it's not easy. I shall tell the truth, you know. It's always because I have quite a big screen, so my eyes really have to travel to go in that direction and that direction. So as a projector, I kind of have an issue with this, honestly. And only when there is two people, when there is more people, like now I've been teaching class, it was a lot of squares there and it was kind of evenly going. It was very different experience, but when I look at two people, it's hard for me to concentrate on both. So I guess from this space I was also asking Mark, because we I don't know, I didn't think
I've done
about
it
it
live
before.
too.
Yeah,
So when you do it, sometimes what I do is I look at a group as one group. And if I
exactly.
don't start singling people out necessarily, depending on the context, but focus on one as an entirely being, and then address it that way. And then, yeah, this is okay. I shrunk my screen, so it's only about maybe a fourth of my laptop. So you guys are stacked on top of each other. So I'm in the middle. So it's not too bad. I look down, I see you,
Well,
Julia. I look up, I see you, Ron. So it's easy.
Yeah.
mm,
And that question, guys, for the newbies in human design is because projectors are really here to focus on one person and at a time. And maybe actually it's a good time to ask Mark about that. How is it for you actually to be with one person at a time and to focus? And um, is this something that has proven to be practical?
Oh, extremely. I think when the thing about being a projector is it's all about recognition. It's your ability to recognize and one another person's ability to recognize you, right? And that's really, 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 really possible, truly possible, only in one-on-one situations. Maybe as a leader of a group, you can be recognized because you're the lead and you're kind of separate from the group. Because once you become part of a group, the very thing that you were invited to be a part of gets lost and you just become a super slave to the group. So, but, you know, when you work one-on-one, you just lock in. That's why I always a third, and this is normal. When you look at three, right? If you look at pent or anything, it creates tension. You know, the third line is tension. It's going from the upper to the, you know, it's mutative, it's adaptive. So three is always going to be creating some kind of dynamic between each other, and somebody might feel left out. Now, if you're talented enough, you can go to one person, then the next person, the next person, the next person, and focus in. I know I have a left perspective, so I have a left view. I'm a focus observer on passive mountains, but I look at, you know, I look at somebody. I can, as long as I'm focused on them, I can read them. Now, if they're there, then I can read them over there. Then I can read them over there. I can read them over there. As long as I'm focusing on one, I can read. I can isolate them. Now, but if you're communicating back and forth, and it's always nice to be separate. Like if you end up at a party, this always usually happens to me. I don't know, Julie, but when I go to a party, I usually end up, if I'm going to a party, if I end up, because those are a headache. If I go to one, you usually end up on the periphery, you know, on the side, and you end up with one-on-one situations. It's very awkward, like at the big table, everyone's hanging out eating or whatever. That's, you know, it's okay sometimes, but if you're just more of a witness, but if you're an active participant, it can be sometimes challenging depending on the topic and what's being conveyed and how serious the, you know, the exchange is. Because a lot of times what you find when you're with a group of people, the very things that you're being recognized for one-on-one get lost when you're with other people. I remember having many great relationships one-on-one, some of my best friends. But then when we got together, the very thing that I was recognized for in those individual relationships were lost in the group. I was on the outside looking in, always, always. But when I was with each individual of that group, it was like, that's solid. That was solid. That was deep. My best friend, you know, for many years, you know, we were solid. He happens to have a manifestor design. I didn't know that for, you know, a long time. But him and I, you know, would click. But in the group, a lot of that dynamic gets lost. I don't know if you feel the same way, Julie, but that to me has always been the challenge going. And I didn't know why. And thank God I learned about human design. That explains it all. You know, it's like it says, you know, did I do something wrong? You know, am I a bad guy? You know, why am I feel like I'm being cut out, right? But it's just the mechanics. It's just the mechanics. No blame, no shame.
Yeah.
Ah, indeed, indeed. Well, for me, as a projector, hood, this being in the collective aura, first of all, is kind of being unseen, allows me to be an observer. And it's the best time to learn, you know, to perceive, to absorb. It's but I know exactly what you mean. And for me, it's also, I remember one time I went to one of the trainings, family constellation, something like that. And the teacher or the facilitator gathered everyone together. And I was sitting there in the corner. And she's like, you see, you're separating yourself. It's not okay. You have resistance, you have trauma, you have to work on it, you have to be like everybody else. And for me, it was like, it's not a trauma. I just feel better. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's yeah.
Oops. I moved myself back. Sorry. Yeah, you know, it's funny, I've been in this over 18 years now, since my initiation into human design.
You're
And
gonna tell us story later.
oh yeah, but it's you know, it's so funny. But you know, a lot of what I just explained earlier was prior to that, and even prior to my more metaphysical aspect of my life, where became an intuitive healer, professional psychic, intuitive, um, did readings that way. You know, what's funny was one day I said, you know, I was doing a really good reading for somebody, but they had called me like 2 or 3 times, and I was like, you know, it's not, I don't mind giving people some advice or you give me a message or whatever it was, but it's like, you know, it would be nice if there was something more tangible that I can give them. And like 2 days later, my old teacher who taught me intuitive healing, unbeknownst to me, was getting certified in the early years of being an analyst with Ra. And he said, you know, Mark, you gotta like check this out. This is great stuff. You got to get in it. They're going to be changing the rules soon. It's going to be a longer process. I was like, oh, I don't know. You know, I got a reading, but that really changed everything. I said, now this is something tangible. This is something I can give somebody. This is their own blueprint. Now I can help guide them. I could show them, but the proof is in the pudding. You have that design, you have that body graph. It is amazing what that can potentially provide somebody. I mean, the potential insight, the potential awareness that you can glean, be able to see more as yourself. Wow. And, you know, that's profound. Not that there isn't some resistance in getting to the place where you understand all that. Yeah.
So that's how you met human design?
Yeah, I met human design that way. And then from there, I was fortunate enough, you know, where I was able to really get into it and really learn the system, experience the system. And it takes a while. But you know what's funny though? I give you a little, you know, I have an undefined root where my 39 sun and 38 earth personalities reside undefined, right? So I'm a cross attention. And so my sun earth personality is undefined. And I used to be a theta healer. I don't know if you're familiar with theta healing, but it's about going up and changing beliefs. So, and then they were telling me that it was going to take 7 years to decondition. I was like, my open route, you know, undefined route's like, oh, hell with that, man. I'll go up and do some bing, bing, bing work and get that. You know, I never even wanted to say 7 years aloud. You know, there was a long time where I wouldn't even say that to anybody. I wouldn't mention it to anybody. I wouldn't say, I was like, it's a 7 year process. You know, it's because it was almost like, to me, it's like that time was seemingly insurmountable, you know, in a sense, like more time now? And you go from one stage to another stage of your life, and then it says takes you 7 years. And then, you know what I discovered? After 7 years, that's just when it really begins. It doesn't begin in year zero, it begins in year seven. Because you had to get a lot of your crap out, and you still have crap after 7 years. Trust me on that. There'll be some situation that will come up that will just go, hello, you thought you were already to me, but you're not. You know, and it still comes up where people, places, things trigger certain responses in us. And we then can learn to deal with that or not, or just see it for what it is, right? But I didn't want to say it at all because I thought it was just too much, you know, stuff like that. And now I'm like 10 years in, and I'm like, no, I mean, the 7 and another 7. I was like, the end of 7, the second 7, I was like, oh, this is just another beginning to another start. You know, it's like it's never ending. And that's and that's actually the gift. The gift is the process. Because then you get to see the contrast, you get to see it in a way that you wouldn't if you were just born with it. You know, if you're just born and living your design, you don't know any better. There's no this and that. There's just this, your life. There's not the, you know, there's not the predominance of the not self. There's not that, um, you know, overlying shadow controlling your life with the mental decision making and all that, right? So, excuse me, sometimes on my right mind will go. You might have to drag me back in. Um, but um, where were we? So it's like,
It goes, and it comes.
no. You know, it's a process. And it's one that needs to be cherished and embraced and appreciated and loved. Um, it's not necessarily an easy process, especially in the first 3 years, especially year three, because the 3.5 year marker is usually the one where you can kind of, you're going uphill and you kind of can go down and it gets a little easier, a little easier. But the first 3.5 years, and that pivot point is when the mind really wants to still take control and still wants to um, be the boss, right? And it's fighting for its dear life. It says, don't forget about me. Don't forget about me and my seven-centered world and how we look at life. This is the way we should do it. You know, and then there's a day when that just goes away, whatever day that is. And maybe it comes back a little here and there because you can never get rid of the not self. It's not possible. Or at least, you know, the definitive not self is the behaviors, action, but there's still not self thinking. There's the distraction and the transference that can act in that kind of way. Although it does have its benefits to show contrast, but that's not the way you predominantly want to live your life. Most of your day in transference or distraction. No, it's about flipping the script and living predominantly correctly. And that's also aligning with your motivation, with your view, you know, and dealing with it as it comes. And you know, in that way, you could see how the life unfolds, and you can do it with awareness, and be the witness, because that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest, I think the biggest next step is like, can you get to a place where you can surrender uh, to the decision-making process of strategy and authority, whatever your authority is. And if you can surrender to that and accept it with no reasons attached to it, because the mind is always looking for reasons. You know, I'm splenic, and if I miss it, you know, or the mind's going to try and play mental ping pong to see what's the best way to go, you know, and it doesn't really matter. But, and then, you know, the emotional people, the mirror on the other side, they're here to wait, but they act spontaneously, which they're not here to do. The spontaneous people wait. It's the mirror of the not self and the self, you know, going for the other. And so it's about trusting in that process and then getting to a place where you can be the passenger, really be able to see the movie and not be as attached to the movie as best one can. You know, what, I don't know if you guys watch yourself, but I watch myself go, what the hell am I doing? Or that's pretty awesome, or whatever it may be. You know, it's like, oh, people say, can you say that again? I was like, that was pretty cool. I'm like, yeah, that was good. Did anyone get that down? Because it's not coming out again. Not like that.
Yeah. And you know, you said one thing that's kind of triggered me because of many reasons. There are no reasons to be triggered. And that is that getting rid of not self is impossible, and it's always going to be there, and it's just the nature of reality and all of this. And when I heard this, obviously Ra was talking about it as well, and many other teachers in their own language and vocabulary are also talking about that. And And I found an answer. It was amazing answer. I don't remember if it was Ra or other teacher sharing the vision of that. He said, oh yeah, it was Ra. It was Ra. He was said, only if you are born and they put you in the darkness and you sit there in the darkness and grow, that's how you can be not conditioned.
Yeah.
And this is kind of triggering, right? I mean, like, how do you even get into such picture in this reality? And then, like 4 years ago, just before Corona, I was traveling in Korea in the Jeju Island, and I was meeting there with like a Tai Chi master. And he told me that in his tradition, that's what they actually do, and they put these children in the cave, and it's usually one child, and then the monks are coming to bring it food and like take care, and it's really all happens for, I think it was like 2 cycles, like 13 or 14 years, and only then they come out. And that these people, they later like really hold space for a lot of people and become these people of wisdom. And I don't know why I even thought about it, but it's
Well, it's
just
okay.
amazing to
Yeah.
just amazing to witness that sometime we hear things that seem impossible to us, and then we actually see that this wisdom of human design, it's not like, it's not about the system, it's just about the information and the knowledge and the description of reality that also other channels and other tradition have access to, just in a different form.
Mhm. Yeah, mechanics are the mechanics. I always say that. They, it's only your experience of the mechanics that evolves or changes. How we can interpret the mechanics, how we can live with the mechanics, how we see the mechanics, aware of the mechanics, being those mechanics. That doesn't, mechanics are the mechanics. Everything else is an evolution of it. The more I've been doing this, the more I can see. That's just reality for me and many other people. You do this, the more you can see, and you can see it everywhere. People talk their keynotes, whether they're self or not self. Well, most people are not self, so you really see that. I mean, and when you really get people's designs that you're around and you're aware of, and you see them operate, there's some big flags that just show you that they're living primarily or predominantly not self. And it is what it is. This is not a trajectory for everyone. It's just not. But it doesn't mean that it's the only way for people to get there or to understand it. It's not. But it definitely is a way to really understand and identify one's real truth. Because a lot of people speak, I live my truth. I always say, how do you know? I said, how do you know it's your truth? Because you're saying it's your truth, because that's what you're experiencing. What is the ways that you can say that you know that for sure? Because I've heard a lot of people say that, and then you look at their chart and you analyze what's going on, and you can say, well, that's not necessarily true all the time. And that's why I also use the word predominantly a lot. If you see my stuff like I write on Facebook or stuff, I say predominantly not self, predominantly self. Because there's times where mostly self, and there's a little widget that says, all right, or you're very not self, but then there's aspects that are aligned to your truth, and you get to experience it. And that's why when you get a reading, a lot of people initially identify mostly with the not self, but they still identify with the self. Because there were times in my past when I was recognized and invited, got recognition, special recognition, and other times I accessed my energy to things that when I initiated didn't have the energy for. So I was able to connect the dots with how the mechanics work for me as a projector. And that was very helpful to see. And I think people, when they have that opportunity, it really is beneficial. I don't know if I answered everything I was going to answer because I got a little segue, but that happens. So what about you, Ron? Oh,
You're
you're on.
muted.
Actually, I was thinking, both of you, about the neutrino ocean because um when you were talking about hearing the cells, about the 7 years process, and not even daring to say the 7 years. I remember my father, who is into Tai Chi, Qigong, or at least those years, um, was telling me not to talk about age because your cells will hear. So you should not even mention your age ever, so your cells are not conditioned by that. And that's like very Chinese kind of wisdom.
Maybe we should tell them, 16, I'm 16, I'm 16.
You know,
Uh,
I,
but when I heard it, about the 7 years, for me it was like super logical, because I knew that memory is in water, and you're like 70% water, so, and you completely change all your cells in 7 years, so it's just biology and
Mhm.
chemistry. But it's hard for the mind to perceive what that means. And also, when we say 7 years in human design, and people are like, oh, yeah, it's from the time I heard about human design, but actually, it's from the time you really started waiting and uh, being for all the types, and being radical with your strategy and authority. That's when the experiment starts.
Mhm.
And still, what is time? It's just a concept. So yeah, we're like an onion. You peel, and there is more coming and
A
coming
lot
and
of
coming, and
layers,
there is no end.
a
Yeah.
lot of layers, a lot of nuance, a lot of context, a lot of different things. You know, as a projector, and I'm a right-minded projector, male, right? In a, I'm very predisposed to being trying to make it happen, not self-manifester. And I have the 14th gate hanging on my sacral, which is really the super worker gate, and that gets activated. So there's a lot of my history is based on trying to be something I was not, and wondering why, as smart as I was, as talented as I was, that I would struggle sometimes energetically or ways of making stuff happen because I was trying to be something I wasn't. And so that, when you find out these things, there is that 7 year process and you get to do it. Really, it's a cleaning out the first 7 years that we said before. Then you really begin in year, 8 or so, whatever that, the next 7. But, there's still the reality that the world we're in doesn't know about this really that well, doesn't know how to deal with projectors that well. Human design really literally saved my life from understanding myself in a way because, and I was very metaphysical, very intuitive, man. I can read anyone from anywhere, anytime. And I was doing that in front of live people, but I was like, I got all this information. I studied numerous modalities and all kinds of things, read so much. And I was then I was like, afterwards, years later, I was like, you know what I coined myself enlightened not self. I was like an enlightened not self being. Right? I was like,
Amazing
I was more
definition.
aware. I could see things differently than most people. I could tap into stuff. I could do, but boy, was I still not self and bitter. Right? But I was
Enlightened
enlightened
self.
in some form. Does that make sense, Julia?
Very much. I know exactly what you mean. Exactly what you mean.
Yeah. And oh, enlighten not self. But it was. I remember being in LA. I was walking up and down the beach in Santa Monica going, what the fuck? It's like, and that's when my teacher got in touch with me. And then, it's like, I guess it was the right time for everything. And I was presented that information. And it was really amazing. I hadn't noticed the symbols in this spiritual newspaper in Southern California but I never really investigated. But it was in my eye. It was always interesting because I liked the shape of the body graph. I liked the way it looks. For me, I like the pattern like that. It's also why I like the traditional MMI versus all these other ones. But to each their own. It's just the lines were nice and clean and crisp, and it just something that brought to my eye. So when it was brought to my attention that I recalled that, and it's just, there was a stretch there though. I mean, from year 3 to 6, I was just immersed in human design. I mean, like 10 plus hours a day, just in human design. I was afforded that ability to do that, and due to circumstances and conditions. And I guess that was part of my path, and I took advantage of it, I guess, or no choice. It is what it is. I watched myself do it all because it got done. But it was what a journey, though. I mean, I don't know, how many years are you guys into this process?
Veronica, what, 2008,
No,
right? And
I started, let's say, experimenting in 2010.
So that's a good amount of time. So with what I say.
and I'm
So,
from 2014.
oh, good.
So
So you both got a good cycle plus in there. And Veronica, you're almost, you know what I'm talking about, though, and you can see the shifts near the end of the second 7. I mean, it's different than where you were at the end of the first 7. I mean, it's a different place. It really is. At least for me, it wasn't a bunch of people I talked to, but it's a good place to be.
And also a very sensitive place to be, I would say.
Why is it strange for you?
Sorry?
Why is it strange to you?
Oh no, it's not strange. I'm loving it. And
Oh, I thought you said strange. All right.
no, sensitive place.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
the more time like goes, and I feel really becoming more and more sensitive. And yeah, it's always interesting to see how I respond to others, and the more time passes, it's more like what is that word? Uh, more precise of what I like. Like my taste becomes more
Refined.
refined.
See that?
Refined.
I call this process a refinement process.
Yeah.
It's about whittling down to oneself, really getting rid of all this stuff. They just not there. Even if it shows up or here and there, but you know what it is. You're like, all right, I know that. I know what it is. Don't worry about it. You let it slide off. What is your design total? What's your profile and
So I am a sacral generator, 4253, 4764, and 63-4, 5-1, Defiance, Cross of Defiance, open, undefined G. 2, my gate, 2-5 is my sun, 1-5 is my earth. So yeah, that's my design.
So you got a wide split then.
Very wide, yeah. I'm very
Yeah.
slow. It's so funny. I'm such a
Yeah.
slow person until it all becomes one. Yeah.
But you have a busy mind because you have all that stuff going on with the two channels up there. I have the 6447. I have the 64.6 four times. So and the 47.5 unconscious. But that's my design move. But yeah, what's funny about generator, I have a son just turned 32 on January 3rd. He's a cross attention. He's 6 months opposite me in the wheel. So we have, half birthdays together. But it was also the anniversary of Ra's encounter with the voice was January 3rd, with the cross attention brought in. But I remember telling my son it was a generator, and he would go, Dad. I was like, Dylan, use your words. And and then later I was like, when I found out he was lying, I was like, remember when I said use your words? Use your gut. And then if you need words, use your words afterwards if you have to clarify. But because he has such a good guy, he's a pure generator. And I love you guys generators because when you're a pure generator and not emotional, because that's a whole other ball of wax. You guys, when you get aligned and in your truth and aligned up with your sacral, man, there's that motor is so humming, it's powerful. You can feel it anywhere. I mean, I can feel it over the phone when I do work. I mean, I feel it. Asking people yes, no questions or stuff like that, and you get that thing cranked up in there. You guys have such a wonderful, wonderful potential of being in the moment, moment to moment. Just that's an incredible thing. It really is because you have your gut respond. It's a little different being splenic projector. It's there's not always things that kind of respond to like you would a sacral, right? So it's a little different.
And I was
Yeah.
thinking about the cross of tension. It's the most common cross, actually. The most people in the world are with this cross, which says something about it, actually. That we so much need to align to the right spirit, and so we need to be provoked in order to get aligned. And actually my mother is born on the 4th of January, also cross of tension, of course. So I was just thinking, yeah, of this yeah, coincidence, lucky coincidence.
Yeah.
So how is it actually to be a cross of tension and a 3-5 projector splenic, not knowing, why? It's just
Yeah.
not knowing why.
It's interesting. It's the only cross really that's always looking at the other side. It's always looking at the other side of the gate, the other side of the channel. It's looking at the other side. So 39 is looking at the 55, looking for the correct spirit, right? The love of loving. Do you have it? Yeah, good. Let's provoke it in, right? It's also looking, what's the purpose that we're fighting for? What truth, individual truth and purpose we need? How do we identify what skills are needed? What do we have enthusiasm for? What can I say I experiment with yes or no with, And then it says, let me see, what do we have? Who are the leaders? Are they the right leaders? Do we have the right resources, material, educational? Do we have that? Right. So it's always poking there. And I've always, as a 3-5, the original rebel, so to speak. I remember, as a student, I was just writing about this. It's like I wasn't necessarily the best student. I could be a very good, I can get great grades, but I usually got bored because threes always get bored. You can't do anything monotonous with a three. It's a soul killer. So if you're doing things over and over again as a third line, that's like sticking a knife right in there. But anyway, when I was younger, that provocation had a certain quality. Wasn't always, it was through the not self primarily. And So the provocation usually, I'm a decent sized guy. I'm pretty strong, fast, very young. And so I was usually one of the bigger guys in school. So I would get sucker punched sometimes. You know, they're like, they couldn't, I would know some, they couldn't beat me in the argument. So they would try to get a shot in. And then I'd end up having to take care of business. But that's one end of the spectrum of being in the cross attention where you can provoke somebody to hit you, or you can have this really provocative thought that just expands somebody's world, their mind, the way they see life. So it runs this gamut from punch in the face to opening up to some kind of beautiful moment in the world where they can recognize something in themselves that really is profoundly transformative. So that's, you know, cross attention has its role, and that's why it was it came in on that, the voice came in there, because, and on the three, threes inherently give tension. It's unsteady. So when you're around a three, it could be somewhat a little unsteady because you don't know. Heck, we could drop something on you. I don't know. You can do that. But I think it's a cross that when it's living correctly can be very profoundly impactful. When it's incorrectly, it could be the biggest pain in the freaking ass. Almost as much as the cross of defiance. I lived with somebody with a cross of defiance for 9 years, a relationship. And let's just say it was not on the self side as much as the other side. And the quality of that frequency is quite interesting also when it's predominantly not so. It's quite the trip, really, especially if you're trying to provoke it. Or be provocative. You know what I mean, right, Veronica? Yeah.
I think I do, yeah.
Well, you know, the defiance is here to be somewhat, right, like in their own. It's not that, you know, we all live the characteristics of our cross. It doesn't mean we're living our cross. It means we're living the characteristics of the four gates that comprise the cross. You know, you really don't get to live your cross until after 50 usually. And, you know, and that's if you're born and raised correctly. You know, everyone forgets that part of the equation. All this is based on living correctly from the beginning. Not to say that you can't have that happen if that wasn't the case and you were a conditioned adult. But let's be real here and understand that we're living qualities to that cross. And that's why the cross has certain names, because it consists of the qualities and traits, characteristics of those gates. But the purpose of the cross, well, that's different. That emerges from living correctly. And it gets planted and takes over the life. Until then, you're just living the parts, not the whole, not the purpose. So when you're dealing with people who are predominantly not self, you know, and you say we're living, oh, I got this cross and that cross. Yeah, that gives you a flavor. It doesn't mean what it means yet. You know, that's, you know, we all, you know, and that's the other thing. I'm a stickler because, you know, there's no, Rob would say there's no half projectors. You're either one or you're not. Right. And if it's part of your fate or your trajectory to your geometry to be that projector, life will take care of you. Right. Like whatever you need, you'll get done. Now, it may not be exactly how you envision it, but you will have what you need once you commit to being that projector. Once that yes is there, life supports you, right? But you know, that's just one part of it. You know, you as a projector, 3-5 projector on cross attention, there's a whole process to get to the place where I'm being that person, you know, where I'm being it as a correct person and not as a not self-incorrect person. And there's a distinction. So people are born with a design say a projector or a generator. Doesn't necessarily mean they're living that. So like when someone says, oh, he's a projector, I was like, well, then what am I? Because or what is somebody living correctly versus not correct? How do you make that distinction? And so, and also people conflate success in the world with living their strategy, authority, and correctness as their type or as an individual, which is usually not the case. 99.9% of the time, most people are not living correctly according to the design, even though they're successful. That's why there's a lot of unhappy, successful people in the world. Successful monetarily, achievement, money. But that doesn't mean, or fame, that doesn't mean that they're actually living their design. They're in the not self world, living the not self life in the seven centered, with the pentas and the was and all that consciousness, and making predominantly mental decisions. So when we talk about people in design, they say, oh, especially the non-sacrals. I think generators might get away with certain things automatically because they have such a natural mechanism, but not if you're emotional. Again, because most emotional people don't know they're emotional, and they don't know to wait. They don't know that time is their best friend. They don't know that, and they're under pressure to make a decision. And how many times do people make decisions when they're under pressure and it's not correct? They don't know this, just to take the time to step away or to say no flat, right? So people who are born with a certain design, that's a potential. Doesn't mean it's an actualization. Doesn't mean it's actually a reality. Doesn't mean that they don't live aspects of being correct according to their type. But it doesn't mean they're doing it predominantly most of the time. And I think that's a difference, because I think it doesn't take away from people in their process, but it's like, all right, let's make these little notations, little delineations, little distinctions, because then we can talk specifically about something more aptly, more correctly, and identify it. And I have the 4816. So I don't mind identifying things. I'm very good with words and identifying certain things and patterns that I see and stuff, and putting a something to it. I've been known for that, even way before design, getting the right description of something. But that's just part of, I guess, my wiring. But how that comes out, though, whether it comes out correctly or not, is also something very different. There's a lot of projectors can see patterns, see solutions, and they offer them up unsolicited, and then they get all that. They either don't get recognized, someone steals their idea, and they just like, oh, I just said that 5 minutes ago, and everyone's like, no, you didn't. And he's like, yeah, I did. I just said it 5 minutes ago. It's because it was entered incorrectly, and no one hears you, right, Julia?
Sometimes it happens.
Yeah, not. I mean, in your past, probably. I mean, it's like, and I go back,
The
again,
past and the future and the now, they are very related terms, so that past is always possibility in the future, and the now shows reflects
yeah,
both, so
there's all that
it's more
potential.
about proportion. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. I found, being radical, especially in those 3 years I mentioned earlier, were very beneficial. I wasn't in a lot of people's aura. I was mingling here and there sporadically. So I was out of aura, sleeping alone, literally always sleeping alone, meaning no, 3 years of nothing, and that was really a time that I got to really radically embrace this process. And I think it is this is a radical way of being. Think about it. We see all this surface stuff out there, all in the IG world, and all these people, they're packaging everything up with the surface. But it's so much more. Because, I call the surface like the individual micro surface level. But if you're looking at human design as a system, you can't take away or separate that micro individual level, surface level, from all the macrocosmic stuff. Like there's people who don't want to say there's no free will. Okay. I never believed in free will before human design, and only human design has shown me that has been the right answer all along. That's what I always heard. And I hear things. 4323 with a 43-6, and I 8-6 lines, 5 of them up here, 6 of them up here. So I hear things, I feel things intuitively. And I was never at a place where free will is. So look, people can get caught up. Oh, look, you got this gate, you got this channel. It means this. You're a type. You need to be invited. Oh, you need to respond. You're here to initiate, but only when it's correct, not just when you want to. Blah blah blah. And they stay there, and that could be fine. That could be perfect for a lot of people. But then you get the place where you're teaching. You're not mentioning the shadow or the not self. It's all positive stuff. There's no contrast. This is about seeing and awareness. And if you're only focusing here and not bringing this up, how do you really see? You become blind, and so everyone has their role. No one's wrong in that, and it's part of the process. But as a 3-5, I see a lot of things that don't work, and I've done a lot of things that don't work, and end up things that do work. And a lot of these things that I see out there just are not going to work, period. People are using different kinds of laws of attraction and things like that. That's not what it's about. No one wants to mention no choice, or they only mention it to a place where it becomes mockery, or they don't, or maybe it's choice here but no choice there. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way, at least not in my experience. No choice is no choice. Rob was asked, do I have a choice being here in this classroom with you? He's like, no. And he goes, and you have no choice whether you're doing it as self or not self. No choice. If am I here to be part of human design and other people aren't? Yeah, no choice either way. No one has, it's no choice. Either it's going to get you, or it's part of you, or it's not, and it's part of your trajectory. And we go back, Julia, to that refinement process, or Veronica, and it's that refining of that process to become more yourself, eliminate all these different things, and see the conditioning. That's another thing that I don't think people appreciate enough, is the level, the sheer magnitude of conditioning that we are bombarded with on a daily basis. If you really looked at it, you'd be amazed that we're able to do anything. To be these anomalies outside the matrix, it's quite profound that that's even a potential. So many people are so stuck in the movie that and there's no blame in that, because that's the role they fulfill. My mom was a wonderful person. I love my mom. She's a great person, but she was predominantly not self. My brother, my father, everybody I know is predominantly not self. Why is that any different for anyone else in the world when you're dealing with conditioning from birth, from food, the environment, the people, the pentas, the whas, the schools? I'm a right mind, left brain, but we're all taught to be strategically left. We have half the world is really predominantly right. And then we have right that half of them are emotional. You know, there's so many layers and layers and layers of things to get to where people have to be correct to operate correctly. Even when we sleep, it's a whole conditioning program. So we wake up with this chemistry that says, I got to do something about because I woke up and I need to do stuff. So, it's like, and I'm making fun of myself too, because I have the 12th gate. So I have all these ideas, they like when you sleep and they come in, you're like, ooh, I'm the guy who has all the ideas. I could have made millions of dollars on all the ideas that I've had. Millions. I have no energy to go do it. Someone said you should just like set up a cart with like ideas and, you pay people, the people pay you. And then if the idea goes through, you get like paid in perpetuity, you get a little percentage for the rest, as much as they sell that product. It's like, well, that's not a bad idea for a projector, passive income. But, this is something that this process is so radical. The way of looking at life is so different. This is not for everyone. It can't be, even though it can be as a potential as you look at it, but as a trajectory, it's impossible. So we can't, think that the world is going to just change and it's going to be all better and all that stuff. No, the changes that are coming are where there are going to be people who are aware, and then there are people who are not going to be, which is still going to be the case after 2027. Predominantly, most people are going to be still not self. So here we are, we've been going at it for a while, and there's people going at it a little longer than we have. But it's really like this first 20, 30-year generation that is building the roadway for everything to come, and it comes easier once it's already began, like information. How much information, Veronica and Julia, can you get online right now about human design? And I'll say, Veronica, you've been doing this for a while too. I mean, before 2010 or 2010, trying to get information online. Luckily, I knew people, it's like, it's a different, somebody can drop 100 gigabytes of information right now. And it's like, people take it for granted. It wasn't the case back in the day. And I don't know which one's better or not, because it's nice to have a library full of stuff, but then when you get piecemeal stuff, you can focus on one thing as it comes at a time, and you don't get too distracted. So I guess it depends on the person and their trajectory, what would behoove them. But it's this is different. This is not for everybody. And I think when you become more aware and you're around other people who are aware and you're around other people who are unaware, the more you look at each other and you go, wow, this movie is so dense. It's so like, so not self. So how do we as individuals in the not self world live as ourselves? Well, as best we can, through strategy and authority, through hopefully that's the way our world evolves and proceeds. And that's our trajectory, to really have that potential fulfilled through correctness rather incorrectness. Even as a 3-5, when you enter something correctly, doesn't mean, and this goes for everyone, but especially the third line or 3-5, 3-6, 6-3. It's not going to be all rainbows and unicorns and jelly beans, and it's not going to be all sweet, because you're still dealing with everybody around you. You're still dealing with mom and dad if they're around. You're still dealing with sis and bro, your cousins and your friends and these coworkers or this or that, or people at the store. And it's like you're always bombarded with conditioning. Conditioning is everywhere. It's so profound. And to have the good fortune of being able to see it and hopefully transcend through it and live correctly as self is what a gift. And probably a lot of people that are watching this or part of your program are on a track where they can really embrace this. And some may fall away for a while and some may come back because, you know, human design and living as yourself is part of your trajectory. It doesn't matter when you go away because you're always coming back. You know, you keep, you know, there's people I know over the years like, all right, I had enough, I'm done. And then they're like, I'm back, I'm not done. I don't know about you guys if you experienced that or.
I absolutely love what you're saying. And again, it comes back to also those I call them thorny crosses. The defiance and the tension, and um those are not easy crosses to live. And the more you become your cross, or the more your cross takes over in this choicelessness, and you're like, wow, I never hoped for that to happen. It's like, it's not, as you said, nice and dandy and pink. And especially at the beginning when you meet human design and you're like, people have this notion or idea that they're gonna become happier, and it's all gonna become pink and life will be better. And uh how shall I put it? Correctness has nothing to do with being easy. And especially when you're born to actually stir things up, and that's your function, that's what, in my case, what makes me purr and loving what I'm doing, no matter that I'm stirring. It's like that stirring is like a side effect to it, and I'm not totally not in control. It's just I'm there and it's happening, and it's not easy, but it's the truth. It's You're getting it. You're getting what you're getting, and it's a frequency that yeah, it's so profound. And as you're saying, it's such a profound knowledge. So we're all lucky, thankfully, to Ra to bring it out in the physical material world. Although it's still perceived human design as something not tangible. So I really loved when you said, oh, but I am intuitive healer and da, 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 and suddenly I get a system which is really tangible. You can show it comes from here and from there. And yeah, on one hand, it really is very visual. And um especially when we go, I really loved how you went through the entire human design system in 15 minutes or something, and mentioned in penta and why and that and that. But it is so profound because we're talking about subject which is energy, and that's not something you can point the finger, but human design actually allows us to even do that. So wow.
At a very detailed way.
Yeah.
See, that's, you know, I used to get to very deep stuff. Like people would say it was like doing 6 years of therapy in an hour and a half when I was doing my consults, like, and going back to people's childhoods and things like that. But, and that was great. But like you said, like when you have that tangible thing, it's, you know, you said something, and I was going to say that I lost track of what that is because I was following you, but there was something you said that, you know, we do live, you know, as a defiance, there's a definitely different quality of defiance when you're living correctly versus predominantly not correct or not self-life. You know, that frequency, that's it. We all have our own frequency. And the way, and you know, this is a refinement process, so we're refining the frequency. Now, we each have our own little radio dial, right? We all know what a radio is still, right? Um, and so we all have our own station, right? So, you know, whatever, I'm 39.3, you know, so that's my radio station on the dial. Now I get that more aligned to my truth, and that frequency is clear. It will attract those people that need to be attracted. They'll hear me clearly. They're on my fractal and all that other stuff, um, but it's about refining that frequency. It's all frequencies. Everything's a frequency. And when we're talking about environment, that's a frequency. When we're talking about another person we're engaging with, that's a frequency. It's a holistic frequency. We can always pinpoint this, that, this gate, this channel, this thing. Yeah, somewhat. But there's always something else connecting to something else, to connecting to something else that's going this way, this way, this way. And we're this holistic being. And a holistic being gets refined over time. Over time. And that's the glory, again, having these 7-year cycles and appreciating for what they are. Even though they can be, like, to me, so daunting in the beginning, because who wants to wait that long sometimes? And especially in the now, everyone wants everything 10 seconds ago, you know, kind of how people are not as patient and waiting. And it was that instant gratification, right? Where people want results now. Human design is not that. I used to speak the language prior to hearing Rod's voice. So when I heard Rod's voice the first time explaining all this stuff, I was like, oh yeah, this is a system. I know this. I was using these words, but now we have a system and a way to access it with a map. And I was like, yes. I was so ecstatic. The more I became human design, the less I did all my other stuff. All that stuff went away. A lot of that went away. It had to, because I had to focus on human design. Not that that stuff didn't come back here and there, and lately I've been exploring other things, just a little more, to get a little more nuance in my repertoire, just to understand other systems and way to access information, so that I can also talk to people. It's one of the best things, especially as a 4323, is when you structure something, you need to know what the person values, what they understand, so you could speak to them in a way that connects the dots for them. And I find, that process has refined over time also. But and being able to see people holistically more, instead of like just focusing on this gate or this channel or that center. I mean, I do zero in on certain things. My eye gets drawn to something, and right away, like, this is like big, but it is a frequency that gets refined. And that's what I tell people. When you get aligned to your truth, to your frequency, you resonate and attract those people. Because projectors, especially, we have, right, Julie, and this goes for other people too, but projectors definitely can identify and see where people could need help. And especially in the beginning, they want to offer it. Or before knowing about human design. And then when they find out human design, they want to tell everybody about it. Don't do that. Don't tell anyone. Keep it to yourself. Wait. Like family members and stuff like that, and you tell everybody, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Or do it. But see what happens. But I'm just saying, from my experience listening to people over the years and seeing the patterns, there's things that can make the process a little easier. Being more selfish, not being so easily to share it until one has it. I think could be a prudent advice for people. I don't know if you agree, but that's it.
Wow.
Wow. That's a download. That's really a download.
Yeah, I I don't know about you, but I know me and I know people who watch me. When I talk about human design, I light up. I can talk about other things and maybe there's a little animation here and there, little interest. But people are like, why you just say, it's like, oh, it's all right. It's okay. Then we get into design. I'm really into design. Oh man, does my frequency get broadcasted a lot louder and brighter, right? There's certain things like, even if you're knowledgeable in human design, doesn't mean that may be what you're here to do necessarily. It is for me, at least so far. And with that said, is when I'm embracing something like that, or anytime anyone is embracing something they love, you just vibe it. So for me, human design is not just the mechanics of it and everything. It's just so fulfilling on a deep level. The mechanics, not just, Ross said, he named it human mechanics because he didn't want to call it plant mechanics because, he didn't think there was going to be as big a market. He would joke about that. But human design system is a system of all these different designs and also all that cosmology, which I don't see any point in not believing, considering all the things I've seen on more on the micro level, on the body graph mandala level, all that other stuff I see. And for anyone watching, there's certain courses that I totally recommend to get a greater context of how the world works. Of course, anything with Pentawa, but the Godheads, 16 Faces of the Godheads is a course that I highly recommend because it gives a great macro view of the conditioning potentials and the themes that we've been dealing with for hundreds and thousands of years that we're still dealing with on some level because we haven't fully transferred to this nine-centered form, which is a transitional form, and it's part of the reason. But we're here like this nine-centered form, predominantly trying to live a seven-centered life and wondering why people were wondering why their life doesn't work. But they don't have an answer. They don't know why. And they're blaming all these other things. Like Veronica's got a wide split. Boy, if I've been with a wide split with a cross of defiance, I forgot that combo.
Yeah.
What emotional generator. With a 59.6, which has also been a strong theme of my life. You know, again, I'll say this is not for everyone. So if you're in this and you're fortunate enough to be in this and people listening to this and human design is part of your path, and hopefully it continues to be and grows from there and you get to really learn about yourself and see life and see how life operates and see how you operate within a life. Not that you have any control over it, but at least you can maybe see it for what it is. See where you're being conditioned on and be able to identify and say, oh, if someone said, hey, Mark, you're being not self. It's like, yeah, I am. That's okay. You know what? I even said one time when I was called out, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it for a little bit longer and I'm going to embrace it. And I started yelling at something and I was like, done. And 2 minutes later, I was like back to normal. I was like that. So, there's moments moments.
And after all, that's an experiment. It's not a competition or something, you know? People come kind of forget it that we're not here to be really serious and about everything and take life as something really that take life as the super serious business and stuff. So
Well,
yeah,
that's the not self is the serious person. The not self is the one that gets offended.
so guys, whoa, if you're taking yourself seriously too much, you're probably too much in your mind. And yeah, I think it's a great way to kind of finalize as like last words to our viewers. It's such a nice guidance you're giving here, because after all, human design is indeed to help us see and put mm, to pinpoint what's truly us and what's not us, or more the other way around, what's not us, and then getting to especially for me as a generator to find out who I am.
Mm.
Yeah.
When you do find it and you see it, you really can honor it and love it. You know, it's really love yourself, love your mechanics. I remember when I didn't love it at first, but I grew to love it. I grew to love my design. I really did. And I wouldn't want it any different.
Yeah.
Well, maybe
Yeah,
sometimes
that is
it'd
a
be fun.
that is a process of growing and maturation into what we are. It's the most natural one. And and that's why we're doing this festival, because we feel that exchanging our personal processes through the keynoting together or in couples or in pentas, experiencing this wisdom in wow through each other, doesn't matter if it's an aura or online. It's a very unique experience. It's a unique experience for me now to meet someone I never met before and understand each other and know who we are with a very minimal verbal information exchanged.
Well,
And
we do have neutrinos coming through us, you know, from one to the other. We are exchanging information
yeah,
again.
of course, of course. And all of it together really brings me always into the state of gratitude for being able to receive this possibility to know it, to experience it, and to move it on to other people, to open this possibility, to be the self beyond the mind and mental concepts of what it is.
Yeah.
So, Mark, yeah, thank you so much
Thank you.
for
Thank
offering
you.
your space and sharing your frequency with us. And guys, whoever is watching, you can also contact Mark or contact Mark through our festival. All the information can be found easily online. These days, everything gets more and more open virtually.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye bye.
Thank you for being with us on this journey at the Human Design Rave Festival 2024.